Chaim was scheduled for a double bypass surgery. The doctors assured him that everything would be fine. A few decades ago, this operation was a big deal, but nowadays the surgery was commonplace with a great success rate. He had nothing to worry about. He knew that the surgery would be invasive yet straightforward, that he would be given a concoction of drugs to relax him and numb the pain. Once sedated, the operation would begin. With a single incision, the surgeon would slice down the length of his chest. Then the surgeon would crack open his chest cavity, delicately remove his heart, and connect it to a heart-lung machine to keep it breathing outside of his body. Crazy. Next, the surgeon would locate the damaged arteries, remove the affected sections, and replace them with a section of artery taken from his arm or leg. After the damaged arteries were prepared, his heart would be returned to his chest, the chest cavity closed, and the incisions sutured. The operation would take approximately 3 to 6 hours. When he woke up, he would be monitored carefully with a team of doctors and nurses. He would be encouraged to move his body the next day and be given a strict physiotherapy regimen and follow-up checkups. His diet and lifestyle would have to change, though. No more chips and juicy steak or chocolate cake. And he would have to exercise every day. No more putting it off until tomorrow. The day of the operation arrived. Chaim had begun his strict diet, forbidding any food or liquids the night before. He checked into the hospital, changed into his white gown, and prepped himself for the general anesthetic. Groggy and awake, Chaim was moved to theater. The anesthetist placed a mask over his mouth and nose. The faces of the doctors and nurses blurred and slowly faded away, and all was dark. A quiet calm filled his body. And then it appeared, a light, brighter than any other he'd seen before. Could this really be happening? He thought to himself. He'd heard stories about it and read about it. Is this it? The end of life? The bright light beckoning me? The peaceful serenity surrounding me? The feeling of complete contentment? A bit cliche, but not so bad. As he moved closer to the light, he thought, but Malka, how will she cope without me? And the children and the grandchildren, they shouldn't have to grow up without a father or a papa. And my mom, Baruch Hashem, still going strong in her 90s. The grandchildren can barely keep up with her. She shouldn't have to bury her son. No parent should have to bury their child, no matter what age they are. But the light was strong, and Chaim was drawn in. As he approached the light, it hit him like a brick. In an instant, he saw his entire life flash before his eyes, like a movie in fast motion. However, he not only saw his life pass before him, he felt it. Every scrape and every broken bone, every heartache and joy, every emotion he'd ever had. The curiosity and love he felt for his baby sister when she first came home from the hospital. The nerves before his first kiss. The pain upon hearing the news of his best friend's untimely death. The excitement of his wedding day. The anger after he'd been retrenched from his job. The pure joy upon the birth of their children. The nachas he felt at his granddaughter's bat mitzvah. The sense of achievement that he and Malka hiked up Machu Picchu 6 months ago for his 70th birthday. And the uncertainty he felt before his surgery. It all came back to him in an instant. And then it occurred to him, this was Judgment Day, the day when God would determine his fate. Was there really such a thing as heaven or hell? Was death merely the end of life, full stop? Would his soul be reincarnated into another person's body? Would his soul go back to God or wait somewhere until the Messiah or Messianic age appeared? Was there even really a God? What happened next? What if there was no next and this was it? Then he heard the sound. Beep, beep, beep. He gradually opened his eyes and was surrounded by noisy machines. And slowly, coming into focus, there was Malka, looking tired and pale. His children were on either side of him, smiling with tears in their eyes. He was alive. Though still groggy from the anesthetic, he had never felt so awake in his entire life. He was given a second chance. At that moment, he knew that this was the first day of the rest of his life. Apologies for those of you I triggered. Here we sit on Erev Yom Kippur, our Yom Hadin, our Judgment Day. Like Chaim, we too are scheduled to undergo an intrusive yet straightforward operation, which will require us to be cut open with our insides exposed. We will need to trust God to take out our heart, to identify our problemed areas, and to help us mend our ways. Then we will be put back together again and given another chance. For Yom Kippur is not only the day when we evaluate our actions, but it is the day when we confront our own death. The Talmud teaches us that 3 books are opened on Rosh Hashanah and sealed on Yom Kippur. Yes, 3, not 1. The book of life, the book of death, and the book of intermediate, for those standing on the balance, walking a tightrope between life and death. On this day, as we stand in the balance between life and death, we wear white and dress in a kittel, a white robe, the traditional garment in which the dead are buried. We recite the vidui, the confessional prayers that are traditionally recited just before death. We evaluate our life, the good, the bad, the ugly, and the beautiful, and we hope for the best. And we deprive our bodies of the sustenance and care needed for survival. The Inui Nefesh, the 5 afflictions of the soul that we observe on Yom Kippur, fall into 2 categories. The first deals with the survival of the body, and the second with the adoration of the body. For afflicting the body leads to freedom of the soul. Without food or water, the body could not survive. Without bathing or cleaning ourselves, the body is subject to disease, which could lead to death. Sexual intercourse falls into both categories, as it is needed for the survival of humanity, and it is regarded as a pleasure for the body. Indulgence in bodily pleasure or admiration, such as anointing oneself or wearing leather shoes, symbols of wealth and vanity, distracts from the soul and deceives us into forgetting that we are all equal in death. On Yom Kippur, we aim to temporarily leave our bodies and focus only on our spirits, our souls. For most of us, Yom Kippur is as close as we will come to a near-death experience. Like Chaim, we've prepped for today's procedure on Rosh Hashanah and have just begun our strict diet. We too wear a white robe and our kittel today. The music, the prayers, the lack of food and liquid will soon make us a bit groggy, so sit back, relax, because we are about to go under. The operation is beginning, and when we come to, in about now 22 hours from now, we will be awakened by a loud sound, the sound of the shofar. We will be surrounded by family and friends, patting each other on the back, congratulating each other for making it through, either the fasting or the long services or the long sermons or both or all three, and only then will the hard work really begin. Right now, join me, if you will, as we walk towards the bright light, as we endeavor to confront one of the most avoided and taboo topics, death. Many of us have lost people close to us, some during this past year, others in years gone by. Burying a loved one forces us to think about the inevitable. When someone dies before their time, we often cry out in anger, why did this happen when they were such a good person and had so much left to live for? This week, at the October 7th commemoration, one recurring theme was that of unfulfilled dreams and how much the victims had left to do. When someone dies in the fullness of time, having lived a rich, full life, we often express gratitude for the experiences and memories they leave with us. Once again, this sense of gratitude and blessing was spoken at the October 7th memorial as survivors, friends, and relatives honored their loved ones by fulfilling their dreams and cherishing the life they lived. But as we reflect on the life they've led, another question often arises: what happens when we die? Some of us take comfort in thinking about what comes after, while others find the subject unsettling and prefer to avoid it. Some of us have a natural curiosity, while others find the question irrelevant, as the answer may forever elude us. It is true, we have no idea what happens after we die. But for many, that does not stop our curiosity or our fear of the unknown. When I was studying psychology, I did my honors thesis on death education. I discovered that our understanding of death, both as the process of dying and our beliefs about what happens afterwards, shapes our feelings towards it, influencing whether we experience death anxiety or accept death as a natural part of life. Likewise, our understanding and relationship with death also shape how we live. Reflecting on death can enhance our appreciation of life and guide the choices we make. But first, to understand death and Jewish views about the afterlife, which I will get to, it is essential that we understand what constitutes life in a Jewish framework. In Bereshit, in the story of creation, we read, Vayitzer Adonai Elohim et ha'adam afar min ha'adama vayipach ba'apo nishmat chayim vayhi ha'adam lenefesh chaya. And Adonai formed Adam from the dust of the earth and blew into their nostrils the breath of life, and Adam became a living being. From this, we ascertain that Adam, representing humanity, is both dust and spirit, both connected to the earth and the material world, and connected to God, the spiritual world. We learn that life is only complete with both aspects. Thus, according to our sages, life only begins when a human being takes his first breath, when the soul is placed into the body, and life ends when a human being breathes her last breath, when the soul finally leaves the body. It was also taught that humanity is both mortal and immortal, mortal in respect to their body and immortal in respect to their mind or soul. Thus, life is both finite and infinite. As the body surely dies, a part of the being, the spirit lives forever. Our tradition teaches that our bodies and our souls will be judged, meaning how we care for our bodies will be considered on Judgment Day. This is Yom Kippur. So, how do we care for our bodies, our fragile vessels that contain the divine breath, the essence of our being? According to our tradition, our bodies are endowed with life as well as our souls. Thus, everything we do to our bodies, be it exercise, eating too much junk food, sleep deprivation, or overworking ourselves, yes, I'm talking to myself, affects our life and our death. Not only does good health and body hygiene help improve our physical and mental health, contributing to fewer accidents, fewer instances of sickness, feeling happier and more content in life, being less aggravated or triggered, But poor health and body hygiene has actually been shown to increase levels of depression, dissatisfaction, illness, instability, and in some studies, increases mortality rates. Our bodies represent the material world. Thus, for the way we treat our bodies in the material world, we are judged. So today is the day we ask ourselves, do we abuse or respect our bodies? Does our body facilitate or impede the needs of our soul? Our soul, on the other hand, that part of us that reflects the divine in the universe, is our drive, our moral integrity, our thoughts and feelings that motivate our actions. For all these things, our soul is judged. Whether we buy flowers for a loved one for their birthday or cheat on an exam, whether we lie to a friend or give our children and grandchildren a cuddle, whether we are rude to a waitress or help someone in need, our soul will be judged for our actions. Today is the day that we ask, did we do the right thing? Were we sincere in our words to others? Did we act in a way that God would want us to act? Did we act with the knowledge that we were made in God's image? How would that awareness affect our choices that we make now? So in Judaism, life is understood as the interconnection between body and soul, of earth and spirit, of human and divine. So what is death? For some, death is just simply the end of life. Perhaps death could be explained as the opposite of life, where the body and the soul, the human and the spirit, are split. Judaism rejects the belief that death is punishment. On Yom Kippur, even as we read the Unatana Tokef prayer, affirming that God determines who shall live and who shall die, attempting to influence God's ultimate decree, our tradition teaches that both our lives and our deaths are outside of our control. Traditionally, God decrees all things in their season and time. God created all potentialities and possibilities, diseases and cures, natural disasters and ecological rebirth, joy and sadness, gluttony and starvation, genetic deformity and evolution, love and hate, life and death. In the Mishnah, Rabbi Akiva said, Hakol tzafui v'reshut netuna. All is foreseen, yet free will is given. All possibilities are out there. What we do with them is up to us. But God is playing the long game. God sees the span of eternity, while we are only aware of our lifetime. How do our lives, our gifts, and our misfortunes contribute to the betterment of the world? A couple of years after I arrived in Australia, I officiated at a funeral of a 6-year-old boy who died from meningococcal disease within 12 hours after showing symptoms. His parents had taken him to the emergency department, where he was sent home just hours after he passed away. It was gut-wrenching, terrible. Was his death a divine punishment? Obviously not. What could a 6-year-old have done that would warrant such a severe decree? Death is not a punishment for our sins. Rather, death happens as part of life, because the potential of disease existed, as did its cure. The mother of this boy channeled her pain and anger into education and advocacy. She raised awareness about the dangers of meningococcal disease in the community and ultimately within the Australian Department of Health. A few years later, a vaccine was introduced, initially for a fee, but eventually included in Australia's national immunization program. All possibilities are created, and what we choose to do with them is up to us. So what does Judaism say happens after we die? Our tradition offers 3 distinct perspectives on the afterlife. As we explore these different Jewish views, I encourage each of us on this Judgment Day to reflect on what we believe and whether or how that belief influences the choices we make in our lives. First, according to the Torah, when a person dies, they descend to Sheol, which, biblically speaking, is the grave. In other words, when we die, end of story. No afterlife, no divine judgment, no reward or punishment beyond that which we experience in our lifetime. If this was all there was, our one and only opportunity to experience life, how would we approach every moment? Would we be more intentional and take action to create opportunities? Would we put in greater effort to help others? Would we choose to spend more time with loved ones and less time focused on work? A second Jewish view of the afterlife, introduced during the rabbinic period, was the idea of bodily resurrection in the Olam Haba, the world to come. According to this belief, when a person dies, the body and soul temporarily separate. The body remains in the grave, awaiting the arrival of the Messiah, while the soul ascends to God. When the Messiah comes, the souls will reunite with their body. Both the living and all who ever lived will journey to Israel, where they will enjoy an eternity in a peaceful setting. Halavai. If we knew that there was going to be an Olam Haba, a future world of peace, safety, and tranquility, and that our actions in this life would determine whether we could enter that world or be excluded from it, how would we act differently? If we understood our actions could help bring about that world, I just said that, how would we inspire others to join us in working towards creating this better world for everyone's future? The progressive movement rejected this belief of the afterlife, by the way, yet incorporated the idea of a messianic age, a time of peace towards which we strive to create in this life, not in death. The final Jewish perspective on the afterlife is the Kabbalistic concept of Gilgul HaNefesh, the reincarnation of the soul. It is taught that when a person dies, the soul leaves the body and returns to God who gave it. According to Kabbalah, Jewish mysticism, the souls of the wicked wander aimlessly for eternity, filled with grief and sorrow. In contrast, the souls of the righteous are immediately reunited with God. Souls that have done both good and bad are reincarnated to learn from their mistakes from their previous lives. Some believe that each soul can be reincarnated only 3 times, while others say 7. With each new life, the soul comes closer to reuniting with their Creator. If we knew that we would be given another lifetime to learn the lessons we missed in this one, how would that change the way we live? What if this were our final incarnation, our last opportunity to get things right? How would we approach our decisions in life differently? Would we trust our instincts more, seeing them as perhaps wisdom of past experiences? Well, not everyone can connect with the idea of an afterlife. But death is something we all must face. While it may be uncomfortable, it is an undeniable reality, the one certainty of life. As we confront the reality of our own death this Yom Kippur, let us also reflect on our lives. Why are we here? What have we done with this life that God gave us? How has our soul guided our actions? How will our bodies be judged? Does our life hold meaning? What have we done to make a difference in our lives, the lives of others, and the world around us? This Erev Yom Kippur, we find ourselves in Chaim's shoes. As Chaim awoke from his operation, from his near-death experience, he heard the sound of his heartbeat on the machines, saw his loved ones, and had a new lease on life. In less than 22 hours, we will be awakened by the sound of the shofar. We will come out of our awesome stupor as the divine books of life and death are sealed at the end of Ne'ilah, our final service on Yom Kippur. We will be surrounded by family and friends, patting each other on the back, congratulating each other for making it through. But what if, today, we each had a glimpse of our own death and were given a second chance? What would we do differently? What changes would we make? How can we see our lives in a new light? Since we never know when the end will come, let's start living now.